back of the post-screening. One, we have Ornella Mutoni and Rendah Haj, two terrific filmmakers here for the Bronx Frame screening. We have one film by Ornella, The Things We Don't Say, and then Rendah's film, Hayat. Their film, Hayat, was made in 2019. Ornella, this was made in 2024. Is that correct? So let's start with introductions. Ornella, do you want to start? You can talk up a little bit about yourself, a bit about the film, and then we'll transition to you, Renda.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having our film screened in the Bronx. Um, it's yes, a shame to not be there. But yeah, I'm a documentary filmmaker and I have a background having worked in TV documentaries. But I'm really inspired by independent films and how they tell stories and the way they take care of the narratives. And so I decided to go into independent filmmaking and have my directorial debut be somewhere personal, which is my homeland, my motherland, Rwanda. And I went and did research in 2022, 2 years before it was shot, because I knew there's so many lessons from Rwanda, from everything that had happened in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi and the way the country's rebuilt itself. But I was really looking for the kind of bubbling thing underneath of like, with all of the lessons and the miracles that have occurred, what are also the things that are we still are contending with? And this is when I came across Emmeline and her work, and she really had this really intimate space in her house where people really opened up about the struggles. And so on the face, there's a lot of reconciliation in the country, but underneath, I think, not everyone can move on, even if it's been 30 years. And um, through her work, I was introduced to young people, the young people you see in the film, who were born from rape. And in Rwanda, they still carry a stigma and a taboo. And so I really wanted to actually highlight that how we move on and break cycles of trauma is if we actually like confront the legacy of mass violence onto the next generation and try to have a space of dialogue to let them also be heard and see what that bridging across generations could do for the future of the country. So yeah, that's why I made this short, and it was definitely made in a time where the world saw so much conflict and genocide, and so it felt even more topical and important to highlight that the violence actually continues in different ways because of the way people carry it. And yeah, that's why I made the film.
Thank you so much for sharing, and it's definitely a very powerful directorial debut, and we look forward to seeing more of your work, which we'll get into a little bit later in this conversation. Renda, I know it's been a little more now than half a decade since you made Hayat. As we kind of joke now that certain things of anything before COVID, we say that was 2019 BC. So that's how long ago that was. But could you talk a little bit about what you remember in making the film? What was the inspiration behind it? And talk a little bit about yourself as well. And specifically, I know it got into, I believe, Slam Dance and New York African Film Festival, I believe, 2020. And that was obviously the COVID year, the virtual year. So if you can talk a little bit about what you remember making that documentary and a documentary film, and a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it has been a very long time. So I'm just trying to recall all the, amazing things that happened during that period. But yeah, it's been a long time. But yeah, very grateful and honored to be screening at the Bronx to everyone. I wish I could be there as well. I'm a documentary filmmaker and film programmer, and a lot of, I guess, my work has been rooted in focusing on intimate portraits, but really of diasporic communities, my own community and adjacent. And a lot of this is usually in conversation with, questions of identity and home and even justice, and women's stories as well, considering, with Hayat, it was about a mother and raising her kids, and that's something that felt very close to me and my upbringing. In terms of Hayat in itself, it was, yeah, truly my first real film. And the idea for that was really to explore in a very, yeah, intimate manner, a mother raising her four young children in Melbourne's inner suburbs. It really feels like it's very much a reflection of my life, but just through a different lens and a different experience that still feels very similar. It was also shot during Ramadan, so as a Muslim, that's also a very important time. And I think just as a backdrop for people, who do know and can connect it, it was quite meaningful in that way of just the heightened sort of isolation and disconnect that Rahma, who is the mother, was feeling. But really, I guess the inspiration was really to create something that was a slice of life and didn't need much context. I think that is especially for migrants, refugees, and this was at a time where the growing Western sentiments, especially in Australia, of, send back the boats and our refugee crisis was really kind of at its height. And I feel like that sort of tension and energy you kind of feel within communities and, just around you is in the air. And so it's really important to kind of have something that could speak just on its own as is without need for justification, really. And I think that is, yeah, quite meaningful for people who can relate to that experience, consistently feeling like you need to delve and divulge all your trauma and have sort of a story to make you feel like you belong in a place when really you can just exist as a person, as a human. And I think what was really beautiful about kind of the process of making this to a family who I've known for quite a lot of years before actually making this, and then sharing it with the world was just really people all across the world, especially when I was in the US and screening it, really kind of talking about how it really just felt like it was they could relate to so much of it from wherever they're from. And that to me is kind of the point. It's like, these are not we don't see people as other. We don't just because they're from a foreign place, it doesn't mean that they're not just like everyone sitting. And you'll see in the film there's, scenes of them playing the kids playing Uno, and that's something that anyone can relate to, and a mother's experience as well of isolation and her truly trying to connect with the world around her, but then also still uphold her culture and her values to her family. And kind of this inherent strength that she has that I kind of admired and saw in my mother. So, yeah, that's a little bit about what I can remember. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer fully, but that's, yeah.
I think that was a terrific and poignant answer, and I think that that's again it's the theme of what we were talking about as a team for this specific Bronx Frame screening series, diasporic communities, and really highlighting the importance of independent film, the work of independent filmmakers, stories that need to be told, have a strong why, and we see here the slice of life, the zest of life, even throughout circumstances that are not ideal, but it makes it even more meaningful given the circumstances of what's been going on the last few years, and specifically from our perspective here in New York, in the States, with ICE, with what our government is complicit in, and genocide in the Middle East, and there's various other factors in terms of civil rights, things of that nature, human rights. It's something where again we want to highlight stories that need to be told, that are powerful, that are thought-provoking, and your two films really do fit the bill. And I love it that this is your early work, and it's again sky's the limit for both of you. Really want to talk about then specific images in the film. We see the Uno in your film, Renda Ornella. We see billiards. We see a terrific image of like the statue in terms of the religious statue, and the background in the foreground we see the residents there. So we see this white religious statue, and we see the residents who are not of that color. We see the two families in each film getting together. In your film at the end, Ornella, that's very powerful. Even when the character says, even though I didn't give birth to this woman, she's still like my child. And a lot of pain and isolation. I wrote down some notes in terms of claustrophobia and anxiety. I think that's a common theme that we're going to see in these films. So I wanted to talk about I guess the imagery here. Uh, Motion pictures, really terrific imagery in both films. I guess what was the process in terms of deciding what would go into the movie, and really if you can talk a little bit more about the experience in making your respective works. So, question for both of you.
Nala, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yes, it's funny because mine was 2 years ago, and I'm also like, I must remember
Right.
the shoot and the edit. But I think one of the key motives I had was, Rwanda is a very beautiful country and it's very luscious and green. And so I really wanted to capture that because that shows the way life continues, the life in for nature, but also, the survivors and everyone who comes after. And I wanted to echo what Emmeline said about her. She had basically left the land that she grew up on because that's where she lost all her family. And when she had the strength to return, she's like made it a place where like life has to persist. Like, you can't kill any insects. All the plants need to grow, need to thrive. And so I really wanted to, yeah, echo that throughout the rest of the Rwandan landscape. Um, and yeah, the religious iconography is quite I just think I like that you picked that up because I think there's just like children who were just coming out of a school and I would cut to shots of children in the B-roll, or like the public in the B-roll to all get that kind of slice of life of like see like people are moved on. It's not just this pain that people are carrying. There's joy and there's these things that are helping people, whether it's religion, whether it's education. And that was just to kind of juxtapose the pain as well in the therapy room because I think when you're dealing with these difficult subjects, it's easy for them people to just portray this place as just a place of pain and suffering. But I really wanted it to be about healing and the way people rebuild. And so, though a lot of the B-roll was to do with that sentiment.
Well said, yeah.
Sorry,
Renda?
I was on mute. Um, I think the interesting thing with Hayat, I feel like it was that the the imagery in itself like was the story and really because the idea and my main inspiration of the story was really to have this kind of slice of life and that was kind of the goal. I mean we had over like 50 hours of footage because we were shooting over 3 months and we'd spend a couple of hours if not a full day almost like a couple times a week and so in terms of what we weren't able to use unfortunately it was it's a lot and so the moments had to be really significant on their own to really allow you to feel, a privy into their internal worlds. And something that I think was also really important was to kind of create the space where you could feel the isolation, not just with the home and the architecture and kind of just their environment, but really through the limitations with their conversations. They can't really, Rahma as the mother can't really speak as much English at that time and couldn't share that language with her kids. And so it was almost like, how do we have the imagery also and the tone and the energy also kind of be reflective of that? And so, yeah, I think the main, honestly, just the inspo was having slice of life and really picking moments that I feel, yeah, were the strongest reflection of that. And, we have moments where, maybe the kids are just playing Xbox. We have like one of the main scenes where Rahma is in the kitchen, preparing food for her kids, and that's sort of in contrast with the tension that's happening in another room and how much almost like weight she has to carry in this moment where the camera is very intimate in what she's doing and almost the kids are quite far in the distance and they're arguing or fighting. We have a moment with Hayat, who's the eldest daughter in the film, and her name means life in Arabic. And we have this very intimate scene with her, and it's so funny how everyone from all walks of life, adults, elderly, whoever it is, all really kind of pinpoint her as like, a moment of connection, whether that's because they didn't expect that scene of being in her world and how intelligent and everything she is. But that was also a really beautiful moment just because we had originally actually wanted to make this film through her perspective and through her lens as kind of the eldest daughter. And that sort of shifted just because Rahma was really kind of, this incredibly powerful matriarch in the family, and she was like the beating heart of everything. But I think having that almost also juxtaposed with her mum as these two women and young women, and just kind of again privy to each of their lives. So yeah, I think that's and also I mean yeah, with the cinematographer like Gabriel Francis, we spent a lot of time to just really build trust with the family before we even came in with a camera. And that was really just to be in the space and feel it out and get them to trust us. And it really, got to the point where they weren't just speaking to camera and asking us questions all the time, but they were really living their lives and knowing that the camera was there capturing moments, but really sort of also, I think at the end of it, they kind of got sick of it. And they were like, so when are you gonna leave? When are you gonna finish? Are we doing this for the rest of our lives? So yeah, yeah.
I love it. Just terrific answers and just beautiful imagery from both films. Credit to your DPs and Ornella, really great editing work from the editor, Maria, I believe. Great work. Also, just seeing a good commonality in terms of the themes of life and healing. Hayat, yes, as you said, means a life in Arabic. And then I believe there's a phrase, Ornella, in your film, Ubuzima ku jikumbi. I think that means life and health and well-being, and it's about healing. There's another phrase I took some notes on. I think it was saying, you can't heal without expressing yourself. And also, again, in rendering your film, the mother's waiting to see if they can get the housing, a house where there's space to live, space to breathe, space to heal, and not to be claustrophobic and anxious. And then also, Ornella in your film, the lead character is saying, coming back here, it's Rwanda doesn't belong to me, but building this house slowly but surely, there's a sense of, the need for community and having ownership of your space. I think that's, really telling here in the Bronx where there's a lot of gentrification. It's hyper gentrification. There's a lot of buildings, being built, and it's specifically even difficult for, a lot of people facing displacement. And in our conversations and trying to get a cinema center, it's like, okay, well, if we can't afford this, we don't have capital stock, we can't get this. And we're trying to build a third space. And effectively that's what is. That's what this is, having our own spaces, having community, and being able to, live with dignity, live in life, and like you said, that zest of life, that slice of life. So I wanted to ask just my next two questions. Essentially, for each of you, in this film, what was maybe a key lesson that you learned that has now served you in your subsequent works?
Wow, that's a a key lesson. Um, so many lessons, I would say. There are so many lessons. I think whilst I like worked in TV, I hadn't gone to film school necessarily. So this was really me just throwing myself in the deep end of making something with a team, but without the kind of infrastructure I was used to with, something that's been commissioned by a broadcaster, and in the director's and producer's position. So there were so many lessons. I don't know where to start. There was lessons of we shot for a week, and obviously the film's 20 minutes, and so in one way we had so much to work with, but I think in other ways it showed me that like the other kind of shots that are really helpful in the edit. So there was like different types of B-roll that would have been nice to get. And there was different types of just different moments. But we, were shooting in I went to Rwanda and filmed with a Rwandan crew, so I had the limits of my time there. And so for me, I actually one of the things maybe I was drawn to for my next project, which is more based in the UK is being able to be around, to not have the like limit of that production schedule, so that I can go back and get the things you need, or also like just be around for the other parts, other things that happen for the contributor's life. And so that was just like a limit of like my budget and schedule. Um, I think I also learned, the sound was a really important thing for me. And I had an amazing composer who's also a Rwandan friend of mine, Hitanya Oclair. Um, and I learned how to better describe the sound I was looking for. We had a lot of a back and forth, and I can acknowledge from my part where I was not good at describing what I needed. And then we got there, and so I think it was another lesson of, okay, now I'll have better language for these things. But yeah, probably more things. But yeah, Renda, what about you?
Yeah, Gregory, I mean, you answered it so well now. I feel like that's honestly, like probably one of the hardest questions. Not because I think maybe because there's, yeah, so much and it's hard to articulate. But I think honestly for me, something that I feel like is I've been able to carry forth and maybe trust more is actually just intuition. And I think Hayat was almost the best learning experience of that because it was truly very observational. And I really had to kind of sit back and, in moments, yes, prompt certain things, but really trust that the story would unfold to me. And as much as I had an idea of what I was trying to achieve and capture in the story, ultimately that I was interested in telling. It was more like the story that I was interested in showing more of and understanding. And I think for me, I'm using film as a medium to understand things that I maybe don't know a lot about and want to explore further, or questions that I have about, my own life and the lives of the people around me and things I'm interested in. And in working. My most recent film was called My Brother Suleiman, and with that film, it was more of almost a blend of true crime and this intimate portraiture of a family. But in that process, I found that actually those intimate moments and the way I learnt from Hayat was able to really serve me in kind of the strongest way. Because of the way that that story came together. You're dealing with, the true crime elements and the more structured and pieced together stuff, but then really the backbone and the heart is really the intimate moments with family and familial life. And now as I'm exploring kind of different forms with more archive and even animation or multi-part series, I feel like yeah, I'm just learning to trust that intuition more and kind of feel okay with not having the control all the time. And I think one of the reasons I love documentary film and I'm so adamant that I think I'm always going to be working in documentary, even if I kind of branch out, is because I just love the process of observing and then just having something turn into something completely different. So that's kind of, I think, been the most special learning process and kind of continuation of what I learned from Hayat.
I love it. So we're nearing the end of this meeting. Two terrific filmmakers, two terrific answers there. And I wanted to, give preface this next question, or like my last question is, the why behind our organization is we want to help more filmmakers make their films, make feature films, find success in the industry in terms of distribution, in terms of making profit, making movies that make money that allow them to continue making their films and find their niche and find success in establishing safe and productive communities in a space that can nurture their creativity and technical skills and understanding the business side of the industry. So that's who we are at the Bronx Independent Cinema Center, our nonprofit. So I want to end with, I guess this last question is, what advice would you want to give to a filmmaker who is interested in making their first short or feature documentary? Because what we've been focusing on the last year or so is screenings of the directorial debut feature films of filmmakers and just essentially the first films of prominent filmmakers to serve as a lesson for people that yes, you can make that feature. Yes, you can make that major docuseries or project. So any advice you want to give to aspiring filmmakers, people who have maybe haven't made their first film or maybe early in their career?
Um, so yeah, big question. Because there's so I feel like there's so many valuable things to kind of be able to pass on. But I would say a couple things. Persistence. It's funny to say it every time, but it's true. You do need a tenacity, and with especially independent work, you're wearing so many hats at one given point in time, and as much support as you have, you are the kind of you're steering the ship when it's a story that you want to tell and feel that you love and care about. So I would say just keep at it, and there's always going to be a lots of things that come in your way and obstacles, and just the trust that you have in terms of the story you want to tell, and having that belief in yourself, and knowing that you can kind of see it through, just requires that persistence. Another thing I would say is identity in your work, and trusting that you have your vision and you're the only person who can tell the story in the way that you want to tell it, but just ensuring that you keep that identity to your film intact, whether that's through values, whether that's through community, your knowledge about something, but really just making sure that you have an identity that's centered on people, and community, and all that. And then the last thing that I would say that's been the most helpful for me in my journey in my life is really um, asking questions, and reaching out to people. And I promise you that, like, the mo people that you never expected to kind of help and give you the time and energy and advice and guidance that you need probably will be able to do that for you. And it can come in so many different forms. But if you see people that you admire, reach out to them in any way that you can, because more often than not, I found that people that I didn't think I'd be able to connect to in my wildest dreams have always been super, super open and willing to guide and give any resource or knowledge that they can. And so just, yeah, use that to your best abilities. They'll help you.
Um, yeah, I think Brenda's said it perfectly, but I think what I would add is, like finding also like a kind of community, which I think you guys are doing in the Bronx, of filmmakers, because it can be quite a lonely process. And so it helps you with your accountability, it helps you with the questions and dilemmas that come up, and people sharing resources. And this is when I have to shout out Renda, because she's like a big person for me that I go to for advice. We met in Melbourne in 2021, and definitely, yeah, just one of those filmmakers that I'm like, through her work, I'm inspired to keep doing the work. And I also would say, similar to what Brenda was saying, but you really need to make your first film. It's going to be really hard to get to the finish line, and so it really has to be this thing that you're like, I absolutely have to make this. Like the story is the one that you feel like you absolutely need to tell. It will motivate you and get you through that persistence. And lastly, I would say watch films, because I think there's times where I'm feeling like it's difficult, or times where it feels like you're not coming to a resolve with something you're trying to work out. And watch films, all sorts of films, like not even necessarily in the genre that you're making the film in. Be inspired by other films. I love drawing inspiration from fiction, and and let that remind you of why you're doing this, because there'll be times where it's really difficult. And I think that always propels me to keep going.
Fantastic. Where can people find your work, find you online, and what's next for you? What are your next projects?
Yes, people can find my work. I don't have a website yet, so on Instagram, ORN Film, and I am making my first feature. So definitely speaking to lots of filmmakers who've already made a feature or are in the process for inspiration. I won't disclose too much what it's about, but it has some similar themes to my film about breaking cycles of trauma, but has a bit more of an investigative, political thriller element. And yeah, in the meantime, I'm also producing shorts and other people's projects here and there. So that will all be on my Instagram. Yeah, on film. And the last thing I'll say is I've also do some programming and there's a Refugee Week Film Festival coming up for anyone to get to watch these films that I've curated. We've got the licenses. One of them is Hayat, and there's 5 shorts, 2 features, and it's a really good way to celebrate the contributions of migrants and refugees and think about those stories in this very, very hostile world.
The question was, what are we working?
But yeah, where can people find you and find your work? And what's next? What projects are next for you? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, yes, Instagram. I'm not too much on social media. My company is Films of Resonance, and I'm hopefully doing more things through that. So yeah, just Instagram, Rendah Haj. And I am working on 2 features, and one of them will be my debut feature. Hopefully, both documentaries, because I love it. And one is to do with liberation, actually, kind of adjacent with home and belonging and identity, and that is, yeah. So that's one of the ones coming up, and I've just worked on shooting a series here in Melbourne that kind of highlights and celebrates African cuisine across the diaspora, which, feels very fitting and something that was really beautiful. So that will be coming online very soon. And yeah, I'm also a programmer and currently the festival director at the Real Good Film Festival here in Melbourne. So if anyone is in Melbourne or knows anyone in Melbourne, make sure they keep an eye out for that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ornella, Brenda, for a terrific conversation. I'll be seeing you next week, hopefully, Ornella, in the UK. So I'll actually be missing Bronx Frame. Then Brenda, definitely, hopefully, we'll meet you soon in Melbourne, or when you do come back to New York. Thank you so much for a terrific conversation.